And we're back. Okay, and we took a short break. So we're COMP305, winter 2016 semester, and it's week 9, part 4 of our broadcast. We just finished kind of setting up some of our assets for our little game. And as I mentioned to some people that are here, man, I'm surprised people aren't here. But anyways, or should I be? But there is an example game that's kind of built in here. That's why it's so big. This project is huge now, right? If you actually double click on the barrel shooting game, you can see that there's some built-in scripts and so on. You can get examples of what they do, and you can pull some of that down to use for yourself in terms of trying to make it go. There's some stuff that they do in the old way that may not work exactly how we do things in our way, and the scripts would have to be converted for that. Okay, so this is probably made for a version of Unity 4X, whatever it is. Okay, so this is kind of cool, but let's do something else. I want to make my player, whenever I click on my player, let's get rid of my barrel for a second. Hold on a second. Do I have my barrel prefab here? Prefab for barrel. There it is. So I don't need this barrel prefab anymore. Let's get rid of it. I want to make it for now so that when I make my player, when I click on my player to shoot the player, right? Shoot the gun, I mean, not the player. When I click on my left mouse button, I want to shoot the gun, right? So how do I do that? Well, remember, I need a player script. So let's just, I got my first-person controller script. That's one. I'm not going to touch that one, but I want to add another script to my player, right? So let's just minimize some of these things. And we'll add a new component. We'll make a new script, right? A new C# script. And we're going to call this C# script player controller. Don't we have a player controller script? Hold on. Let's take a look. Because that first-person controller is what it's called. So we'll make ours player controller. So we'll call this player controller. It's very important not to mix up your scripts, by the way. If there's something called the same as something else inside your project, anywhere in your project, it may make you create errors for you. So be careful about that. So I'm going to create an ad. And one thing I know that my script goes in my regular assets, which is not where I want it. I want it under my scripts. I'm going to pull that in there. Okay, cool. Here's my player controller script. I'm going to double click on it, and we start with a couple things, start and update. Okay. So what I want to do is, when I click on my button, my left mouse button, I want two things to happen. I want the muzzle flash to appear, right, in the spawn point. I don't have a spawn point yet, but I need that. In the spawn point, I want the muzzle flash to appear. Okay, it's going to happen. That's one. And the second thing is I want it to make the sound associated with the bullet. It's part of the spawn point, right? Or the muzzle flash. The muzzle flash and the bullet, they're connected. And I got nothing to do there. The only thing I do is press the button, get an input, press the button to make that muzzle flash appear at the spawn point. So I need a reference to the spawn point, and this will be the muzzle spawn point, the muzzle flash, or we'll call it flash point. Okay, so again, we'll call it we'll make some public variables here, public member variables, or instance variables, whatever you want to call them. And one of the public variables I want, if it's a spawn point, right, it's got to be a game object. So I'm going to kind of call it game object, capital G, and we're going to call this spawn point. Spawn point. So one game object I need that one. The other thing is I need a reference to my muzzle flash. I need a reference to my muzzle flash so that my muzzle flash plays, right? Okay, and my muzzle flash, what type of thing is my muzzle flash? Let's take a look in order for me to get the right type. So if I go to my prefabs and look at my muzzle flash, notice that it's a game object, but I actually want to play the particle system. That's what I really want to play. The particle system, I want to instantiate this whole muzzle flash game object right where it is. So actually, it's more than one thing. It's a particle system. It's got a self-destruct script that's built into it, right? So it's a script that we don't know anything about. What's a self-destruct? We have to basically check this out and see what it is. And all this script is it says, well, die time is time.delta time plus lifetime. So whatever lifetime is, public float lifetime and a die time, right? And then it says if time is greater than the die time, well then destroy my game object. That's all it's going to do. So it's going to wait for a certain length of time to destroy the object. It's a complete script in itself. It's totally no problem. And the lifetime is 0.3, so 0.3 seconds. So 300 milliseconds, let's say. Yes, that's pretty cool on its own, that it'll self-destruct. And that's for this entire game object. So I can't just pull in, I can't make a reference just to the particle system. The particle system is going to play when this game object is instantiated. It's going to play on awake, right? So the only thing I need to do is make a reference to the game object. So it's good. Again, these are things to know, right? So again, going back to my player controller, I need to make a reference to another game object. And the game object is going to be the muzzle flash. So we're going to call this muzzle flash, right? Oh man, did I call it spawn point? I meant flash point. Okay. I need two references to that. Let's do that now. Let's pull them in. So I'm going to kind of go in there, and if I look at my player now has two public items, a flash point and a muzzle flash, and let's pull those things in into our object. Now remember, this is from a prefab. That's okay, but just FYI, right? So here's my, if I go back to my prefabs, and if I go to muzzle flash and I pull that in, there it is. And if I go to my spawn point, oh man, I don't have a spawn point. So let's add that into the player. It's got to be part of the player's rifle though, right? So right here in my AK rifle, that's the spawn point that I need. So right near the rifle where I saw it before. I remember where we put it. We kind of had it in there earlier, right? So what I want to do is I want to add a new empty game object, and we're going to call this thing spawn point. So, or sorry, flash point. Okay, it's a spawn point, but it's for my flash, muzzle flash. All right, let's narrow in there in the scene. So I'm going to kind of go into the scene itself. From my flash point, kind of move in there and zero in on where this thing is. Where is this flash point anywhere? This empty game object. My transform is at 0, 0, 0, right? But it's 0, 0, 0 relative to my gun, right? So if I go to my gun and I rotate around the scene so to look at these things. So where is this thing? Where is my spawn point? So I'm going to kind of look at this thing. Oop, undo. I meant to look at my flash point. Undo. And I want to pull it up a little bit more. And again, I want to kind of put it as close to the muzzle as possible because this is where I want it, right? And again, the way to do that is to look at it from orthographic views. So from the top. So I'm going to pull this over. And then look at it. And then zoom in. Oops. So approximately there, but let's take a look at this from an orthographic perspective, from the top view, right? Notice that the positioning has to be this little circle, not the square, right? So the circle has to be approximately right here. That's where it's going to be approximately. And again, you can vary this as much as you want. Now let's look at it from the side, right? So that's pretty good positioning. But we want to kind of move this up a little bit more. So that's where the flash point's going to be, right? So top and side looks pretty good. Let's look at it from the front as well, like from the other side as well, because we want to be able to see it so that the muzzle flash is right in the middle, right? And that's pretty good. That's a really good estimation of where that thing is going to be, right? So we're going to look at that stuff, and if we zoom in even more, you can see how accurate we're being here, right? You can be as accurate or as inaccurate. I mean, it's just for the game, but the more accurate you are for your gun or for whatever, it's a prop, right? I mean, it's not nothing real here, but you can be as accurate here to make it so that it appears right in the front of the muzzle. Okay, I'm just rotating this around again. All right, so that's my spawn point. So I got my flash point for the gun, and now I can use it to attach to my player script. So I'm just going to do one of these. Yeah. So I got two. I've got my flash point here, and I got a prefab that's in here, right? If I was to run this thing now, it's not doing anything yet, but I don't have any errors either. Okay. Cool. So when I click the button, I want to use my manager. So when I click the button, I instantiate my muzzle flash right where at the spawn point. That's where it's going to be appearing, right? Let's go back there. So how do I do that? So first of all, how do I get input? I need to get an input for my gunshot, right? So I want to have input for my button, right? My button, right? So how do I do that? So remember that it's going to start like something like this. Every update, I'm going to check on the update. I'm going to go to something like this: input dot get button. Now, is it going to be get button or get button down? Okay. Get button down. So that means like my get button down, right? And in brackets, we're going to call this fire 1, right? So my fire 1 button. Huh? Good, right? So input.get button down is the command. Now this is going to return, right? This input.get button down is going to return something, right? It's going to return what? It's going to be returned if it's true, right? If it's true or not. So if input.get button down fire 1, if that's true, then what are we going to do? We're going to instantiate every update. So we're going to instantiate, right, our muzzle flash. That's what we're going to do. We're going to say instantiate this muzzle flash, right? And now the thing is, right, we have to move it somewhere. We can't just instantiate the muzzle flash. Notice that instantiate also has a vector 3 position, right? And we also have a quaternion rotation, right? And that's okay. We're going to kind of say muzzle flash. What's the position for our muzzle flash? Well, it's going to be our flash point dot position, right? So flash point is the game object itself, right? So, whoa. So can I get flash point by itself? Well, flash point is a transform, right? So flash point dot get component, right, dot position is what I'm looking for, right? I can't just go get flash point dot position. Right? So this actually game object flash point is wrong, right? I shouldn't do this. What I really want is a transform, right? That's what I really want up here. A transform that's a flash point. So that means, going back to the drawing board, right? And again, this is just how I code sometimes, right? So I'm back to Flashpoint, or back to my player, and let's kill this thing for a second. And it says game object. But let me go back here to my game object, and I want to save this as a transform. And what I want to do now is try this out. If it's a transform, can I go flashpoint.position? And yes, I can, because the position is a vector 3 object. Now I also need a quaternion, and I'm going to say quaternion dot identity, which means just whatever the location is of the rotation, whatever the rotation is as a default. So that's really what it is. Instantiate a muzzle flash, right? Muzzle flash includes sound, so I don't have to include that, right? That's what it does there. If I click my fire 1 button, that's what it does. Okay, cool. Let's save this, go back to Unity, and let's check. I'm missing a game object for my flash point. Let's put that flash point back in. There it is. Now notice it's this way because I'm looking for a transform. All right, let's check it out and see if it works now. So press it, over up. It doesn't do it all automatically, but the flash point is pretty good, right? Oh, wait, stop. Okay. Not bad, eh? It's kind of a weird effect. It's not perfect or anything, but what the hell? So we've got, let's recap for what we've done today, right? We've got a gun, and the way to make the gun work, and again, I showed you this, we have the player itself. Here's the player. He has the player camera, and this is just a first-person perspective standard object that I brought in, right? Renamed it to player and player camera. Well, one thing I didn't do is tag it as a player. I should probably do that. And then I added in another camera for the gun camera, and I changed a couple things here. I changed the culling mask for the player camera to not include the gun layer. The gun camera is the gun layer, and so is the AK rifle. Here's the gun layer for the AK rifle. My flash point is also part of the gun, right? Flash point, my AK camera, my gun camera, all that's there in front of the gun, right? My gun camera, it has a different clear flags. My clear flags is depth only. That's important to put in. My clipping planes, so my near and far planes are different. They're 0.1 and 10 compared to my regular camera is 0.3 and 1,000, right? So my regular camera has depth of 0, and I have to change my gun camera to a depth of at least 1 or something higher. So it sits on top of what's rendering behind, which is the player camera, right? And my culling mask for my gun camera is only the gun, but nothing else. So it only renders one thing. Okay, when I do this, I can't go into the wall anymore. The other thing I did for my gun itself is I took away the shadows, so I don't cast shadows because it doesn't look weird, but I still want to receive shadows. I also dragged and dropped in the texture in order for me to see the texture on my gun, right? One more thing is I use a reticule, right, which is only just a canvas element, an image canvas element. I might as well just rename this thing to reticule. There it is. And the reticule is kind of sitting in the middle of my screen. It's kind of big, but for now it is what it is for us. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to change my perspective so we can see. I got a bit of stuff going on here. So move up the chain a little bit. There we go. And just scroll back. So this is what the gun really looks like, right? And when I play the game, I want to show you what it looks like here, right? So again, my dot doesn't go away. My gun doesn't go into the wall. I can scoot up here, look where I want to shoot. And this is going to be a problem later on, as I can already see that, because it kind of gets lost. The yellow kind of goes away in the horizon, right? And that's okay. And then I scoot over here, right? I can fit in between these little walls, and I've created this a little bit of a larger maze here. And you know, depending on where I go, I can do my thing, and I can also fire my gun. That looks pretty good. Next day when we get together, we'll make the impact work, so it'll hit the wall, right? We'll make use of something called Raycasting, right? Which is one of the methods. There's two main methods that we use, right? So you do kind of missile weapons, I'll call them that way, standard missile weapons in you know, in a game. One of them is Raycasting, and the other one is physics. Like for example, if I take a grenade and I throw a grenade, that'll be a different kind of effect. You're gonna have to see the grenade kind of fall, and then boom, right, it'll blow up. That's a different kind of missile weapon, right? It's a kind of a volley. Right? I'm volleying a grenade, it's gonna blow up, right? Using physics. Whereas the gun is using a raycast. That's the easiest way to do it. It's right through my camera. So wherever my camera is looking, that's where it's gonna shoot, right? And that's what we're gonna show you next day. Okay, so to recap for what's due Friday, one more time. Friday, what I want you to do is finish your levels. So I want to see a finished level on Friday. Mechanics, just like I've got here, right? You may have or may not have obstacles like barrels or whatever. Please don't make the barrel game, okay? I don't want to see a barrel game again, right? I've seen too many barrel games in my life, right? Barrel games are bad, they're evil, all right? Make something else. So I want the whole level. So if you look at this level right now, this is not really the whole level. One thing that we're missing here is a place to exit. We need an additional, something else to kind of show us that we need to exit the level, like a door, right? That would be good. If we had some kind of doorway, right? And by the way, I do have extra things we can show you next time, other assets we can add in. I just don't want to give you too much because then our GitHub location is going to be huge. It's going to be massive. GitHub's going to get mad at me. It's going to be like, you know, 2 gigs by the time we're done, right? So we need something like that. That's missing. Next week, we're also going to do things like the score. How do I add a score to this stuff? So I shoot something, you know, whatever. Shooting something is one thing. That's one way of getting a score. But the other way of getting a score is avoiding your, you know, jumping over a hazard or picking up a coin or something like that, right? So we'll do those kind of things too. And then what happens when I died? How do I respawn, right? So I got to think about, you know, kind of creating a starting point and creating a game controller. All right. So all the same kind of things that we did in assignment 1 and assignment 2. We're going to repeat in assignment 3, just in 3D. Okay. Questions around this stuff that we're doing? I want a map, right? That's what I really want. And I want to be able to kind of have a way to show you that you can move around the map. Sounds don't have to be there. I don't care about sounds right now, other than you're walking around. You can use first-person perspective. If you really want to, you can use third-person perspective. I'm telling you, there's more. There's issues around that. Like someone made a plane game, right? A plane flying around. I can tell you that sometimes making games like a plane game to make it realistic and also so that you can achieve things is not easy, right? It's actually harder to do than making something that, as an example, is a shooting game like this. This is an easier game to make. So I don't care about animations. Animation is not part of this project. If you want to add them, bonus, right? I'm not caring about sounds right now or anything like that. That's next week. This week, show me your level. Show me your obstacles. Show me how to get from point A to point B, right? That's what this week's all about. Right? If you can do that, and you can navigate with your character, if I can play the game with your character, moving him around, or her, if it's a girl, right? Moving her around levels, I'm good. Right? That means you've got most of the level right there, right? Any other questions? All right, I know we're doing in this multi-phase approach for this project, but the reason why I'm doing it this way is so that everyone finishes. All right. Otherwise, I'll give you 3 weeks, and then 2 months. Imagine all this in like one. You try to do this like overnight. It's not going to happen, right? Then I'm going to get crappy projects for like number 3. I don't want crappy projects, right? And that's why I'm doing it this way. Okay, guys, thank you so much. See you next week, and good luck for Friday's submission.
So can we use the environment from the asset store?
From that?
Asset store?
Yes, you can use environments from the asset store. You can use assets from the asset store. The only thing I'd ask you not to do is use scripts from the asset store. The only script that I'm allowing is your standard script that you get for your player movement. That's it. Everything else you have to write on your own. Okay?